Now this is my 1949 Studebaker 2R5 half-ton pickup truck that my sister and I are in the process of restoring. And today I just wanted to talk about the disassembly of the shock levers found on my Studebaker truck. What you have before here is a shock lever. This is a front shock lever for my pickup. Here are the two mounting holes that mounts it to the frame of the truck. This up here is an access cap that we're going to be taking off here in just a second. And there's a huge spring underneath it that you got to be careful about when you're removing this cap, and we'll talk about that. And then down here at the bottom, this is where the relief valve is located. This is the relief valve nut. And the relief valve is supposedly the only place where you can adjust the stiffness or softness of these shock levers. And they have different relief valves that you can use, and I'll show you what the relief valve looks like for these. So we'll just go ahead and start taking it apart. I'm using my vise here. I'm going to go ahead and lock it down inside of there. The reason you need to do that, because as you're loosening these slotted screws up here, there's a spring under tension in here, and this cap will pop off of that spring. So what I'm going to figure out is which way to hold this arm to keep that spring from popping. And to do that, just go ahead and loosen off these screws a little bit. You want to take them out all the way, just enough so that you can see which way to hold that arm as you're taking it off the rest of the way. You can see the cap coming off. With the old gaskets and stuff, you may have to pry it a little bit to get it loose in the gasket. But once you get it loose, you can see now that I need to hold the arm down this way to allow me to take the rest of those bolts off the rest of the way. These are 1/4 inch coarse thread slotted screws. When I put mine back together, I'm actually going to go with 1/4 inch grade 8 bolts because my shock levers will be painted black. So remove that cap off of there. And for these shock levers, they came off of my parts truck. They actually had a cork gasket underneath there. On my project truck, they had a paper gasket. So I made paper gaskets to go back on my shock levers for the parts truck. But there's the access panel there. And then I'm going to let this up. You'll see this rocker arm coming up here that's attached to this arm right here. And here in just a second, you'll see a piston coming out. This is the piston. And if you remove the piston, what you will see in there is a thing called the intake valve assembly. It's a little cap. It's got a spring on it right here. That's the way it actually sits there. And so that's the next part. And then after that, you will have the piston spring. And once you got those three components out, that's pretty much everything that's inside of there. And you can go ahead and drain whatever oil's left in there, clean it out. I did that. I cleaned this with diesel. And so you don't have to worry about oil coming out. Again, there's that rocker arm with your control arm there. We'll go ahead and take a look at that relief valve. This is the relief valve nut. We'll go ahead and this was the hardest part of the shock levers. In a lot of cases, I ended up having to get a small pipe wrench to put onto that and to break that one free. So you may have issues with that. Just keep that in mind. Also notice that this is a slotted screw, but look how big that is. And so if it's hard to come off, make sure you find a big enough slotted screwdriver, or maybe a chisel ground down to fit a slotted screw to try to take this out. Otherwise, you might round off that slot. And so it comes off. There's a little slot inside of there that this relief valve sits in. I'll go ahead and just tilt this over a little bit. Pop out that relief valve. Again, this is what the relief valve looks like. This is the only way supposedly to adjust the stiffness of the shock, by changing out the relief valves. Now this is the one I got, so hopefully it will work. All I really did was disassemble my shock levers. I cleaned them up. I built new gaskets for them and filled them up with clean oil, and then put them all back together. My hope is when you look at these arms here, between these arms and the shock lever body, that's where there's a seal that can leak. And for my shock levers, I did not notice any leaks on the pickup, and they all had oil in them. And so my hope is that these seals will continue to hold. If they don't, it's pretty much impossible for me to rebuild these, because you're going to have a special press to press out this arm, or to press off this arm, so you can get to the seal right here. And there are a couple of places out there that advertise rebuilding shock levers, and I think they cost probably around $175, maybe $200 now, to rebuild your shock levers. So just kind of keep that in mind. There are some shock levers that this rocker arm holds this pin in here, and you can unbolt that rocker arm for the pin and slide this out and replace the seal. But unfortunately, for these shock levers, that's not the case. You got to have a special press or vise to get this arm off to get to that seal right there, and that is beyond my ability. So hopefully these seals will hold. But again, this was not a rebuild of the shock levers. It was just clean them all up, put new gaskets in, fresh oil, and I'm going to see if they'll work from there. Hopefully this will help somebody else out there. Thank you very much, and bye.